In a small village in Kakamega County, a Luhya lady was born. Surrounded by brothers and sisters who loved her, she grew up full of confidence, knowing that her future was secure. Kakamega County is one of the most populated cosmopolitan counties since it has different Kenyans from different tribes, but about 70% of its population is from the Luhya tribe. Few years later, this lady joined a small school in her village, known as Manyala Primary School. Every day she would remind her friends about the type of future that she wanted, and everyone around her always admired her level of hard work because she was a very focused person in all that she did. As she finished primary school on her way to secondary school, her parents were so proud of her, and they made sure she had everything she needed, because in their village, most girls got married at a very young age. But this young, beautiful lady decided to do what most girls in her village were not willing to do. She decided to remain in school. For several years, she kept working on her dreams, and with full support from her family, she became a role model to several girls within her small village in Kakamega County. Today, I bring you the story of this extraordinary Luhya girl who inspired several ladies in her village because of her hard work. This is the story of a Kenyan lady who had big dreams in her life, but God had different plans for her. This is one of the most powerful stories in my YouTube channel, because to me, it's more than just a story. The lady in this story is the lady who gave birth to me. But the last time I saw her, I was 4 years old. This is the story of my mother. This young Luhya girl is the person who gave birth to me. When she finished her education, every handsome man in the village wanted to marry her. Several young men would approach her parents to ask for her hand in marriage, but my mom had already made up her mind because she had already fallen in love with a handsome Luo man from a neighboring village. At first, they kept their relationship as a secret because most Luhya men were always overprotective, and since my mom was from the Luhya tribe, she always made sure that her relationship with this young Luo man was kept as a secret so as to avoid conflict among the two tribes. After several months of meeting secretly, they finally decided to inform their parents about their secret relationship. A big meeting was held, and the two families decided that the only way this lady would be allowed to get married to the Luo man was through a legal traditional wedding. Finally, their relationship was out in the open for everyone to see, and the whole village came together to witness the union of two tribes, both from Kakamega County. An agreement was made by the two tribes that through this union, tribalism would be a thing of the past. And immediately after their wedding, both their parents decided that the two newlywed couples should move away from the village and start a new life in the capital city of Kenya, known as Nairobi, away from their village. The name of the Luhya lady was Margaret, and the name of the Luhya man was Martin. The two of them happened to be my biological parents. As I explain this story to the world, I am emotionally driven while I narrate it because their story has always been my greatest inspiration in life. Immediately after their wedding in Kakamega County, they moved to Nairobi, which is the capital city of Kenya. And through hard work, they managed to get good jobs with good payments and good salaries. So they decided that it was a high time for them to start a family of their own. With all the dreams and all the plans they had for their future, they knew that nothing could ever stop them from their future greatness. So they got their firstborn child. But unfortunately, their firstborn child did not make it. Their firstborn child died during childbirth. And this was a very big setback in their path of life. They had everything planned for the future, but God took away their firstborn child. And this drove both of them to deep depression. It took them several years before they thought of having another child. But several years later, they decided that it was time to have another child. Luckily, God gave them a healthy, beautiful child, and they named her Dorcas. And then few years later, God gave them another healthy, handsome child, and they named him Samuel. My name is Samuel. They gave me that name because they wanted me to grow up in church, because they regarded me as a blessing from God, because I'm the only son in a family full of ladies. But immediately I was born, the lawyer lady, who also happens to be my mother, started having problems with her spinal cord. My dad spent a lot of money trying to make sure that my mother got the best medication available in Nairobi at that time. Few years later, she recovered fully and she even went back to work. But immediately 4 years later, after I was born, my mother was back in hospital again. She started having serious headaches. At times she would spend a whole week in hospital, and then she gets back to her feet and goes back to work. And my dad would assume that everything was okay, only for my mom to fall seriously ill again and go back to hospital. At this time, I was now 4 years old, and my mom was pregnant again. But just a few months before she gave birth to our last born, our lives took a painful turn, because my mom lost her life in Kenyatta National Hospital. The doctors noticed that the strain on her spinal cord had affected her brain, so they tried to save the baby, but unfortunately, the beautiful, intelligent, courageous lawyer woman lost her life on that day together with our last-born baby. My dad always describes it as the darkest moment of his entire life. The death of my mom and the death of our last-born was a big shock to all of us. This was the saddest day of our life, because on the same day that we lost our mother, we also lost our last-born. Every coin that had been saved in their bank account for our future was used for my mom's medication. And by the end of the day, my dad had to start planning for 2 different funerals at the same time. My dad tells me all the time whenever I talk to him that the doctors wanted to remain with the body of the child so that they could dispose it, because even the doctors noticed that my dad had spent so much and they wanted to save him from the burden of conducting 2 funerals at the same time. So they tried to negotiate with my dad to give them the body of our last-born so that they could dispose it, so that my dad would only have one burden of burying my mom, but my dad refused and told them to put both the baby and my mother inside the same coffin. Every day when I try to imagine the picture of my mom and our last born child inside the same coffin being transported to Kakamega County from Nairobi to Kisumu to Kakamega County, it breaks my heart. I can just imagine how it felt for the two of them traveling besides each other, lifeless, inside the same coffin, lonely, and being transported all the way, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, to be buried besides each other. From that day, our lives have never been the same, because the sadness was too much for my dad, but he struggled on his own, and he made sure me and my sister, we got good education after the burial of my mother. At some point, a few years later, we had to spend a portion of our lives back in the village. And even though I was a young kid, I still remember how difficult it was for me to adapt to that harsh life in the village, because the death of my mom changed everything in our lives. Today, as I create this video about my mother, I want her to know that growing up without her was one of the most difficult things I ever did in my path of life. My mother was a young, loyal lady who dared to dream big, yet she never achieved her dreams in life. But I will always be proud of her, because she was always the portion that created that inspiration that runs deep within our family. She always wanted me and my sister to have a bright future. And to my young sister who died with mom, I want her to know that I will always be proud of her. I may not have known her, and I may not have spent my life with her, but I'm so sorry that she never got the chance to know how it feels to be alive, because they both died on the same day with mom. The two of them are the biggest inspiration in my life, and I am forever proud of them. To my mom, may you always rest in peace. And to my baby sister, may she always remain as an inspiration to every member of our family as we work towards our own path in this life.